The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. The time is 2 o'clock and it is December 3rd. Before we get started, I do want to make sure that all the attendees can hear us okay on the webinar. So the way we can tell is if you would just please raise your hand. Okay, perfect. I've got several hands raised. Okay. So welcome and thank you for attending the joint stakeholder meeting for the State Board of Addiction Counselor Examiners, the State Board of Marriage and Family Therapist Examiners, the State Board of Licensed Professional Counselor Examiners, State Board of Psychologist Examiners, State Board of Unlicensed Psychotherapists, and the State Board of Social Work Examiners via webinar today. Before we get started, we'd like to introduce the staff members from the Division of Professions and Occupations that are present. My name is Elena Kemp, and I'm a regulatory coordinator with the division. Excuse me. Also, we have attending Raina Sabarborough Gordon. She's the program director. And Darcy Magnuson. She's the regulatory analyst. In compliance with the governor's orders regarding COVID-19, the division has transitioned to a platform that is 100% virtual, and we appreciate your flexibility. As many of you have been to DORA stakeholder meetings before, we would like to reiterate the importance of your comments today. DORA makes decisions every day that may affect your life and your business, so your input is vital in the rulemaking process. Throughout this process, our main goal is to create regulations that clarify and explain legislation, ensure minimum competency to enter and continue to practice, and provide what is absolutely necessary for consumer protection without creating unnecessary barriers to the marketplace. Your input will be part of the information that goes to the boards as they consider adopting rule revisions to implement Colorado House Bill 19-1129. This bill prohibits a mental health care provider from engaging in conversion therapy with a patient under 18 years of age. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the website at a later date. And as this stakeholder meeting is held solely via webinar, please raise your hand by using the hand icon if you'd like to speak, and we will unmute your line so you will be heard by everyone. Or you can type your comment in the question section and we will read it aloud. However, before we start taking comments, I want to ask that everyone that plans on providing comments, please state your name and who you represent, if any. Feel free to provide either general comments on the rule changes or specific comments on the proposed language. Please try to keep your comments limited to 3 to 5 minutes or less. And try not to repeat something that was already said. If you're stating you're in full agreement with someone else, that works just fine, and it will be noted. If you're using audio through your computer, please remember to put any phones on vibrate or turn them off. And whether or not you're using computer or phone audio, try to keep background noises to a minimum when speaking. So at this time, we currently have the Board of Addiction Counselor Examiners rules up. And the way we'll kind of run this meeting is we'll just go through each board and look at the changes, ask for comments, and then we'll go on to the next board. And then at the end, if someone joins later and they've missed the board that they were interested in talking about, we can always flip back to that as well. So once again, you can just raise your hand if you do want to provide comments. And we'll open the floor up. Oh, looks like we have one hand raised. And I do want to make sure that if you have your hand raised, it's for comments, not for previously helping us with the sound check. But I do have a Dan Kendrick with his hand up. I'm going to unmute your line now. It looks like you're self-muted. Okay, never mind. Oh, okay. Mr. Kendrick, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, you're self-muted again. Okay, Miss Jeanette Barzy, I'm going to unmute your line. It looks like you're self-muted, Miss Barzy. Okay, we'll circle back around if you do want to speak. I have another hand up from Leanna Hale. I'm going to unmute your line. Guess I'm not having too much luck today. It looks like you are also self-muted. Okay, I've got a hand up from Miss Lori Jack. I'm unmuting your line. Miss Jack, it looks like you're self-muted. Okay, let's see. We also have a hand raised by a Thea Weasel. I'm unmuting you. And it looks like you are self-muted as well. I wonder if we're having technical issues. Darcy, are you able to hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. If anyone is on and is trying to speak and we're unmuting you and you're not able to unmute yourself, if you want to just type in to the questions, that'll let us know if we're having any technical issues.
Okay, it looks like we do have a couple of comments in the question section. Oh, it's just people letting us know that their hands were raised for the sound check. Okay. Alrighty, so we will continue. It doesn't look like anybody has any comments for the State Board of Addiction Counselor Examiners. We can always come back. So now we'll go to the Board of Licensed Professional Counselor Examiners. And what you see on the screen is the draft rules related to House Bill 19-1129. And these rules, I do want to say, they are very similar across the boards. Slight differences, but overwhelmingly the same, similar.
And it looks like Jeanette Barzy, you have your hand raised and it's showing that you're self-muted. So if you do want to provide comment and you're unable to take yourself off of mute, let us know. It looks like we should be able to hear you now, Jeanette Barzy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having a little difficulty just with the technical stuff. Maybe everybody needs to, you just have to click the orange arrow and then it lets you get to where you can self-adjust it. But my little icons show that my hand is down now and I shut off my own microphone. So I just turned it back on because you were seeing it. So, but in any case, if you just click on the little orange arrow, then they can get to where they can turn on their microphone or off the microphone.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
All right.
Okay, I don't see that there were a couple of hands raised, but those were previously raised, I think, due to the sound check. I don't see any additional hands. So we will continue with the next board. The next board is the State Board of Marriage and Family Therapist Examiners. And these are we call them red line changes, but the changes in blue are the revisions to the rules. Okay, looks like we have a comment from Miss Leanna Hale. Can you offer a brief synopsis related to the revisions of statutes? I do not have the statutes to reference in front of me. So 1 second, we actually do have the statutes. I don't know, Darcy or Raina, if you guys want to chime in. I do have House Bill 19-1129 available here on the screen.
Just briefly, so the title of the legislation was concerning prohibiting a mental health care provider from engaging in conversion therapy with a patient under 18 years of age. It's a fairly short bill. It was 6 pages long from beginning to end with the governor's signature at the end. So that's just the general summary of what the law says, and then it defines conversion therapy and then prohibits it for by mental health professionals who are clients under the age of 18 and makes it a violation under the statute.
Looks like we have another comment from Ms. Leanna Hill. How does this coincide with consent statutes if a minor seeks treatment on their own without parental consent?
I think those are separate issues. So this bill is just about conversion therapy and prohibits it by mental health professionals who are working with clients under the age of 18. I think the consent piece for receiving treatment, from what I understand from your question, is separate and apart.
So I'm going to go ahead and pull back up the marriage and family therapist rules. Although I don't see any hands raised, so maybe it's okay to move on to the next board. Oh, I do have a hand raised. Mr. David Johnson, I'm unmuting your line. It looks like you're self-muted. So as we heard from an earlier participant, it sounds like if you press the orange arrow, you should be able to adjust your microphone and speak. Okay, we can always come back to you. All right, I don't have any other hands, and it doesn't appear that we have any more comments in the questions.
We do have a couple of written comments. Gregory Marshall, is there any consideration on holding on rule revisions since the 11th Circuit Court has ruled last week that such laws violate free speech and cannot be implemented in the states of the 11th Circuit? Also, the activity that needs to be reported is also unclearly defined and therefore makes the responsibility the licensee would hold unclear. Can this not be implemented at this time due to these two issues? So I think we can look into your questions for sure. At this point in time, we're at the beginning of the process, so the notice has not been filed with the Secretary of State yet. The boards have not seen the draft rules. We're getting simply stakeholder engagement, so I appreciate you raising those questions. The law currently is in effect regarding this, and we're simply the boards are charged with adopting rules. So we can look into those questions as we continue to work through this process. And then Tanya Macrea, what if the minor is requesting help in changing their attraction? Leanna Hale, so if a 15-year-old wants treatment for a conversion issue, can they get any treatment in this regard, or are all therapists prohibited under all circumstances? So I would encourage both of you to take a look at the definition and statute of what conversion therapy is. We can't provide any type of legal advice or try to interpret the statutes. I think that the definition will likely help in what conversion therapy is and what is prohibited by the legislature. And Tanya Macrea also added from same-sex attraction to heterosexual.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. So we'll go to the next set of rules for the State Board of Psychologist Examiners.
We have a couple more written questions. David Johnson, so I assume this does not include reparative therapy. So again, we can't go beyond what's in the statute. We're not here to, the purpose of today's meeting is simply to discuss the proposed changes to the rules. So I encourage you to look at the statute, look at the definition of conversion therapy and what is included and what's prohibited by the law. And then another question, does House Bill 191129 5.5a state that the prohibition only applies to psychiatrists? It applies to all mental health professionals. That's defined in statute.
Okay. We can move on to the next set of rules, and these rules are for the State Board of Social Work examiners. It looks like we have a hand raised, but I'm not sure if that was from earlier. Mr. David Johnson, if you'd like to speak, I am unmuting your line.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. The reason I asked is because I went through reparative therapy myself, and there is no difference between the words reparative therapy and conversion therapy. In fact, I know the guy who created reparative therapy, but now it is called conversion therapy. And so my question or concern would be that if professionals just use the term reparative therapy, then this bill would be completely useless because they can just simply say they are doing reparative therapy instead of conversion therapy. But it is the same thing. I went through Love in Action International a while back, and I just want to, I just have that question.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's really useful information. We'll definitely pass it on to the boards when they're considering.
This is Darcy. Sorry, I think that that's certainly an important concern that you're raising. The issue is that the boards can't change the law. So the boards can't expand the scope or change the definition or add into the definition of conversion therapy. So that would be something that would need to be changed by the legislature.
Emma.
I apologize, Mr. Johnson. I'm going to unmute your line again. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like you're self-muted. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, I just, so I am a marriage and family therapist, and all I know is this, with this law, therapists who still want to do this with individuals under the age of 18 can simply write in their notes that they are doing reparative therapy. But I promise you, it's important to understand it is exactly the same thing as conversion therapy. So if it went to court, they are just simply going to say they are doing reparative therapy and not conversion therapy, simply because of the wording. But I'm here to tell you how important it is, because it absolutely destroyed my life. And yeah, somehow this needs to be brought up and heard, discussed, and fixed. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your input. We have a hand raised by a Dr. Rio Leslie. I'm going to unmute your line. Okay, it looks like you're self-muted. Dr. Leslie, we'll circle back around if you still want to speak. We have a hand raised by a Lynn Timura. I'm going to unmute your line now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I actually wrote a written question as well. I had my hand raised before and apparently didn't see it. But at any rate, I just was curious. The existing rule already requires folks to report known violations of 1220, 245, 224. And the prohibition against conversion therapy is in 12-245, 224. So I guess, could you say a little bit about why it was felt like this specific addition was necessary? It basically seems redundant.
I think that that's a good point. We can certainly take a look at that. And then ultimately it will be up to the board to decide whether to adopt the changes, but I do think that you make a good point.
Okay, thanks.
And then some more written comments. Gregory Marshall, the rules on this, if they must be written, shall hopefully be written in such a way not to create enmity among colleagues who have differing faiths or worldviews, and would acknowledge that the terms and actions of conversion are ill-defined, as the recent speaker stated. And then Zane Grant said, I would agree that semantics are important as we clarify the language. And then Lynn Tamura, I will read for the record your comment, even though you just spoke as well. Since the prohibition against conversion therapy is in 12-245, 224, and the existing rule already requires licensees to report known violations, could you say a little bit about why it was felt that this addition to the rule was necessary? It seems redundant. Thea Wessel, it would be grievance for anyone participating in conversion or reparative therapy, since it is not classified as a mental health disorder. All of the ethical orders classify this therapy as unethical. This now binds ethical code with statute and law.
Okay, I assume that's all the written comments. I do want to circle back to Dr. Leslie just to see before we move on to the, oh, looks like Dr. Leslie is now offline. Okay, so we will move on to the next board, the last board, the Board of Unlicensed Psychotherapists, and these are the draft changes. Looks like we have a hand raised. By Mr. Dan Kendrick. Oh, it looks like you're self-muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Just one quick question, and you may not be able to answer this, but just for the record, in terms of not required to report when reporting would violate client-therapist confidentiality, wouldn't it always violate client-therapist confidentiality, or what am I missing there? If someone's...
I see what you're saying. This is Darcy. I think it'd be important to, because I don't know off the top of my head what 12-245-220 says. So that's the statute where it would allow it, it looks like. I'm not, don't quote me on that because I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I would take a look at that statute.
Okay. Okay, very good. All right, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. Or comments in the question section. So we'll give it a few more minutes just in case someone is typing, and then we'll proceed with the meeting. The current time is 2:33. We'll give it a minute or two.
And this is Darcy again. While we're waiting to see if we have any more comments, I wanted to thank you all for participating, understanding that this is really limited what the board is making rule changes regarding. So I hope that you know that we heard your comments and concerns, also understanding that some of the changes that you're suggesting would need to be made at the legislative level and not by the board.
It appears we do have a comment from Mr. Gregory Marshall. How is today's comments being used for the rules exactly? Thank you for the opportunity to offer them. So what we do with early stakeholder engagement is this is the stakeholder and licensee's opportunity to speak on the rules, the proposed changes, and they'll be presented to the board. If the board has authority to include all the suggestions from stakeholders, it'll be up to the boards to implement those suggested changes as long as it's in their scope of authority. So we'll present all the comments to them. And actually, because this webinar is being recorded, they'll listen to the recording prior to the permanent rulemaking hearing. So I hope that answers your question. All right, the current time is 2:35. Doesn't look like we have any more comments or hands raised. So thank you for participating in today's meeting. The stakeholder comments and program recommendations will be presented to the boards prior to the formal rulemaking hearings. We do have tentatively scheduled hearing dates for each board. So the State Board of Addiction Counselor Examiners, the tentative schedule for the permanent rulemaking hearing will be on April 6, 2021. State Board of Marriage and Family Therapist Examiners will tentatively be on March 26th of 2021. The State Board of Licensed Professional Counselor Examiners will tentatively be on March 5th, 2021. The State Board of Psychologist Examiners will tentatively be on April 2nd, 2021. State Board of Unlicensed Psychotherapists is tentatively scheduled for April 16th, 2021. And the State Board of Social Work Examiners is tentatively scheduled for March 19th, 2021. So that concludes this stakeholder meeting, and thank you again for your participation. Oh, before we end the webinar, it looks like we do have 2 more comments that popped up. One from Galen Bieber. Is there any update on how long there will be unlicensed psychotherapists? I'm not sure that I understand that question.
So that's not part of today's meeting. So if you have questions about certain programs, you are welcome to email the mental health boards and ask any program-specific questions to the boards.
Okay, thank you, Darcy. And we also have another comment from Mr. Will Logan. Will attendees receive a recording of this meeting? This meeting will be posted on all of the board's web pages. If you go to the board's webpage, go into the public notices tab, you'll see a link that will link directly to this recording. All right. Have a good afternoon, and thank you again. We're going to end the webinar now.